Yeah, definitely faster for Burkhart and more explosive as well, thanks to Flourishing Fox. Though this draw from Corey, no Flourishing Fox. The Jeskai cycling deck is very straightforward. Almost every card in your deck has cycling, and you're just trying to find as many copies of Zenith Flare as possible, as the big burst of life you'll get from the Zenith Flare will give you the edge in most race situations.
A lot of the time, the number of cards in graveyard is equal to the number of cards that you will deal, the amount of damage you'll deal with a Zenith Flare. Not always, but very, very close to it. One thing to keep an eye on as we get into this matchup for those of you watching at home is that, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, the Footfall Creators, the Startling Developments, whatever, they are just cycling one, right? Like it's pay one, draw, discard. But in some situations, all of a sudden, the Startling Development is a giant growth. In some situations, you do cast Go for Blood. You can draw 4 cards with Boon. So, Marnie, we're going to keep an eye on the fact that these cycling cards actually do, very occasionally, do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that we saw from Corey there was he has a bit of an awkward one-land hand that he's kept as we rewind a little to try to get things to the right point, as they were a little out of sync. But something, just talking about Corey's opening hand, as we are going to go back to that game, he had a really interesting mulligan decision where he had 2 copies of Improbable Alliance in his hand with no blue mana. He only had the single land, and the card is so powerful in the matchup in order to create those chump blockers that are going to make life hard for Matt Sperling. He actually made the choice to put back a cycling card that would allow him to have a better shot of fixing that hand, just to keep the second copy of Improbable Alliance. So Corey definitely making a bit of a gambling call there, but I think given how good the card is in the matchup, it makes a lot of sense.
Looks like we may have fixed up the issues behind the scenes here. We'll get things underway. And yeah, I think it's a really important point to note the fact that Burkhart clearly considers Improbable Alliance a key part of this matchup. And one of the other things about the mulligan here, you look at a one land, oh geez, that's not good. But this deck does have huge velocity, right? That's what we call it. It's able to see a lot of cards every single matchup. Well, speaking of seeing a lot of cards, look at this Innkeeper into Giant Killer. Are you kidding me? Draw 2. The world's cheapest Muldrift coming into play now as a 1/2 Giant Killer. But the one lander isn't as fatal as it might seem at first blush here. And Burkhart, as you can see now, already drawn the second land. Let's see if he can find his third. Zenith Flare instead, not what he's looking for. But, it's a little more forgiving, this deck, when looking for those key cards.
Oh, there it is. Riley, that's the third land. That everything is now rolling for Corey Burkhart. Already a copy of Zenith Flare in hand, going to have 2 Improbable Alliances next turn and start making these fairy tokens. And honestly, looking at Matt Sperling's hand, despite this disgusting start with the double Edgewall Innkeeper, I would actually say that Matt Sperling is in trouble this game.
Land number 3. And there's a Lovestruck Beast, which is going to draw 2 more cards here for Matt Sperling. So no end to the cards coming off the top of the deck for him. And can attack, but does he want to put these Innkeepers at risk? Yes, he does. Okay, well, I imagine Burkhart will snap off the trade here with one of these Innkeepers. The damage already done a little bit in the sense that Sperling's already drawn 4 cards off of the Innkeepers so far. But back now to Burkhart, who finds a Flourishing Fox. And this sort of something about how this deck can contest the cycling deck money, because it can go wide, right? It's got Valiant Rescuer, it's got the Improbable Alliance. It can go tall with Flourishing Fox, and then failing that, if you just sit there and kill all their creatures, they will cycle, and then one-shot you with a Zenith Flare. So it covers a lot of angles.
Yeah, this game is purely a race against the clock now. Matt Sperling recognizes that, which is the reason he went for the attack. And I think Corey also recognizing his role in the game now. Flourishing Fox, its time has passed. We didn't have it on turn 1. Now every cycling card is just about getting in the graveyard, triggering these Improbable Alliances. Corey wants to get to a point where ideally he can trigger Improbable Alliance once on his turn, once on his opponent's turn, using 2 cycling cards on their turn. So if he does that, it's going to be really hard for Matt to break through. Matt really recognizes the pressure he's under, which is why we saw that Edgewall Innkeeper attack last turn. Every point of damage is going to matter if Matt is going to try to win this game.
And I want to come back to the point I made before the match as well about the fact that, this deck doesn't play Embercleave. You haven't been able to chump block against red. You just haven't for I was going to say years, but it certainly feels like it. Since Embercleave was printed, chump blocking against aggressive red decks is you're just not going to live doing that. You need to have removal spells. Whereas here, these 1/1 fairies can meaningfully get in the way of big red and green beaters because Embercleave is just not a factor in the Naya Adventures deck. And that really changed the texture of these matchups, especially when you've got a, non-stop source of these 1/1 chump creatures.
Sejiri Shelter, big draw, but yeah, Riley, you made the point. Rarely, if ever, have we seen somebody have 7 cards basically every turn of the game while developing their board and be in a losing position. Yeah. And I'm making the bold statement. I think Matt Sperling is in a heavily disadvantaged position right now.
Valiant Rescuer going to go even wider now. Startling Development will land 3 1/1s on the battlefield. 1 mana, draw a card, make 3 1/1s. Not too bad. Not too shabby there. Going to try him off the top. Now, maybe he doesn't play this. Maybe he wants to cycle it away.
It's tough. 3 mana cycling, not ideal, and because there's so many cycling cards and so few lands in this deck, Corey may just want more mana options, give himself the out of potentially cycling into casting Zenith Flare, but opts to hold it off, just making sure that no matter where the game goes, he's able to have more control of his draws. Dragon time, Riley.
Sperling has continued to develop his hand very nicely thanks to these Edgewall Innkeepers. And now we move to the phase of the game where the dragons enter the fray, yes. And here is Goldspan. Oh, excuse me. I have a slight dragon allergy. You'll have to excuse me. In comes the Goldspan Dragon. And we're seeing a big attack here. Is this dragon staying at home?
I believe this dragon is going to be attacking. Matt is currently thinking about the giant killer first. The dragon needs to make the treasure because Matt really wants to get rid of this Valiant Rescuer. Right now, this Rescuer is going to continue providing Corey more tokens than Matt is able to put pressure on, at least in the current state of things. So I would not be surprised to see a stomp headed towards the Rescuer before Corey gets a chance to untap.
Bunch more tokens now, and here is the Goldspan Dragon getting in.
A third improbable alliance drawn from Corey Burkhart. Oh,
gross.
Any 1 mana cycler now from Corey, and that is just going to be massive.
And the 3/1 Valiant Rescuer eating it to the Bone Crusher Giant Stomp here, thanks to the instant 2 mana rebate. Pay 5, get a 2 mana rebate today at Goldspan Dragon Limited. And across they come, knocking Burkhart down to 15. Valiant Rescuer off the top to replace the one that was just lost. Or, alternatively, there is that Improbable Alliance, which will flood the board very, very nicely here.
Yeah, this looks like an Improbable Alliance cycle rescuer to
How
me.
improbable is it really now? It's happening. It's happened twice. It's probably going to happen 3 times. Like a third. Oh, I'm not even going to call it. It seems likely Alliance at this stage.
Matt Sperling throws out the nice. Corey only plays 3 copies of the Alliance in the main deck. There is the 4th in the sideboard, but
how improbable is that, mate?
Considering how good it is in the matchup, I would be quite frustrated in Matt Sperling's position to see all 3 copies staring me down from the other side of the board. And a second copy of Zenith Flare drawn for Corey Burkhart. Riley, this game is more or less decided in terms of Corey's game plan from here on out. We're going to chump every attacker that comes through at us except for the ones with 1 power, and then we're just going to spend the next 2 turns throwing Zenith Flares to the face.
And this is what happens here. Even if one isn't enough, you chain 2 together, and that's usually going to be 20. It's all over but the crying here.
I think Matt Sperling really needs to cast Bone Crusher Giant here, maybe cast both of them just to try to find some Unleash Furies and try to set up for that combo kill using Sejiri Shelter, because other than that, I do not see a route to victory for Matt Sperling here.
So Shadowskull Smashing can remove 2 of these fairies from the equation, but that isn't going to do it. That's not a long-term solution to this improbable alliance. Who knew what was the power of friendship, Money? The power of friendship. When true friends get together, fairies and dwarves, there's no limit to what can be achieved. So, Sperling's going to go for gold here, though. Bone Crusher Giant removes 1 of the fairies. Is this enough? Surely not.
It's definitely not enough this turn. If Corey doesn't draw a 1-mana cycler, Matt has 17 damage on the board, a Bone Crusher Giant in hand, so that's 19 damage. Oh, that's a 1-mana cycler.
Yeah,
no, it's not even close to enough anymore.
Never mind. 3 1/1 blockers, double Zenith Flare in hand. Both these Zenith Flares at least 10 points of damage, I think.
I can't tell if it's a 9 or a 13 that I'm seeing. That looks like a 9. I believe they're each on 9 right now, but it's a little hard for us to tell from our feed.
I think it's double digits. I think it's double digits here.
Then I would likely be looking at 13 damage from a Zenith Flare right now.
Yep. And this is what I was saying about, even if the first one doesn't get you, the second one certainly will.
Corey has a window here. I think he may just want to fire it off, but honestly, I don't think it matters as long as you don't aim that at a creature. And the disastrous part for Corey, if he were to aim one at a creature, is as long as it doesn't go to the Goldspan Dragon, it will resolve. If he tries to kill that dragon and Matt plays that Sejiri Shelter, Corey can just lose the game.
Oh, it was 9. There we go.
All right,
okay,
they are
so
9, goes to the face. Corey back to 17. Matt, I don't see it. I really don't.
No, I don't know how he gets through this one, especially with that life count. We're going to see a Shepherd of the Flock returning a Giant Killer. And this, I think, is just so you can cast it again as a 1-mana divination.
It's a 1-mana draw, too. We need Unleash Furies. We need it now.
Let's see. Off the top. All right. Sejiri Shelter and a Pathway. Not going to do it. And with 3 chump blockers here and another Zenith Flare in hand, Burkhart only needs to attack with 1 of those fairies to seal the deal, assuming the dragon isn't back to block. I guess there's the Bone Crusher Giant in hand here. This one's close-ish. I mean, it's not over, I guess. I guess there is still some crying to do here.
It really depends what Sperling... Any cycling card off the top and Corey wins the game. I guess, except for another copy of Rogan Triumph.
Yes.
So in terms of draws, Corey has a ton. There are many live draws in the deck. The question here is, what can Matt essentially lead Corey into blocking with? Because right now, Matt is representing potentially 2 Unleash Furies. Now, by using a Bone Crusher, he's representing 1. Right? So if Corey just blocks with 1 creature, I believe Matt only has, I guess with the dragon, he is representing infinite essentially. But
actually, he's only got 6 cards in hand, so actually.
I think Corey could have the read that Matt does not have an Unleash Fury here and just not block with a fairy and go for the win.
So here with this, you don't die to 1 Unleash Fury, you die to 2.
Right. This is strictly you die to 2 Unleash Furies or an Unleash Fury plus a 3rd Bone Crusher or 4th Bone Crusher Giant.
But there's no series of blocks that saves you from 2 Unleash Furies.
There is. You just have to block the dragon and a Lovestruck Beast.
Because then the unblocked one, they double Fury.
The first Fury has to go on the dragon to have the mana to cast it.
True. Very, very true. Sorry. Yes, no, you're right. Yep.
So this is Corey's big struggle. If he just blocks the dragon, he dies to 1 Unleash Fury on a Lovestruck Beast. So this statement, Corey is saying, I think you have at most 1 Fury and no other damage. This is Corey playing it safe and hoping he draws a cycling card, but it's It's really risky if he does it. If he draws a land, if he draws a non-cycling card, he loses the game.
Well, he can make 3 blockers next turn no matter what.
Right. He can activate the Improbable Alliance.
But it does put him, in a worse position to do what he's trying to do. We're going to see.
It puts him at dead. He doesn't know it, but there's 2 copies of Sejiri Shelter in hand now. So Matt is able to get 2 5-power creatures through next turn.
Right, force him through his protection. Great point.
Yeah, Corey is in a risky spot now. Matt may have found the one path to victory here.
And there's the Unleashed Fury, just a little late. Edgewall Innkeeper going to hit the bin. Got enough cards, says Matt Sperling. Okay, back over to Corey now.
Corey looks
needs a 1-mana Cycler off the top. It's a Plains. And it looks like Corey has played himself into a corner here. It looks like he's played himself into a corner. He obviously he couldn't know it. He didn't know the contents of Sperling's hand, but I mean, full credit to Sperling here, who has played an absolute blinder keeping himself alive for this one.
Matt Sperling, this is just masterful plays from him, and it's so difficult. Oh, and the emote is so
wow, a bit of psychological warfare as well. Some savage BM from MS
here.
The
School of Canister coming out here, as clearly Matt has been taking notes on how to get into the MPL, the emote game. That's the number 1 priority right there.
The disrespect here, the disrespect from Matthew Sperling, as Corey is forced to play a land. He can fire up the Zenith Flare, but I think it's still only 9.
It is still only 9.
He draws and discards to.
There's the 3rd Rogran Triumph, and Matt knows he has it.
But that's it. I mean, that's all she wrote, because there is 2 copies, as you say, of Sejiri Shelter.
Yeah, protection.
Which can force through 10 damage.
Protection on Dragon or Lovestruck Beast. Attack with the Dragon, make another treasure. That gives you the 2nd white mana you need. Protection, another Lovestruck Beast. It's over. Matt just thinking about everything, but he knows he has this. Realistically, he's got this in many ways, considering Corey only has 3 blockers for all the creatures. But
what about just like the old attack with all button? How does that do? 1, 2, 3, 7, 10. Yeah. I mean, even without these, it's almost certainly going to be over here. Protection from blue. Wow. A wise choice. I can only compliment you on your choice there, Matthew Sperling. A fine choice for you.
I really do not fault Corey for playing it this way. It's so difficult in that position to know what to play around.
Yeah.
And he decides to trust the top of his deck, and it doesn't reward him.
A lot of people will look at this and be like, wow, Corey stuffed this one up. Corey took a loss here where he didn't need to. He had the win just there like that. But sometimes it's possible to make the correct plays and still lose the game. Sometimes it is possible to do what is right and still be punished for it. And that's what happened to Corey there. I don't think we're sitting here and being like, oh wow, what a Galumba. He really made a meal of that one. I think he played around the cards that he thought were reasonable to play around. He happened to get punished for it. So a rough bounce there for Corey Burkhart. But the good news for him, there is game number 2 and potentially game number 3 if he can get up here. Out come 3 Boon of the Wishgivers. In comes that extra copy of Improbable Alliance. Unsurprised to see that. And Glass Casket, which can deal with some of those early plays. A much more robust sideboard plan here for Sperling, who takes out Giant Killer, not so useful in this matchup, and Shepherd of the Flock. In comes Wilt, Tormod's Crypt, very, very good against the Zenith Flares, of course. And Klothys and Fire Prophecy. Klothys can also slowly but surely munch through the graveyard while doming the opponent. So a nice little sort of graveyard hate package here from Sperling, although a lighter touch for the Jeskai cycling list here, Manny.
Yeah, Tormod's Crypt, massively powerful against this deck. Being able to get rid of their entire graveyard essentially resets the cycling deck. So I think Tormod's Crypt, definitely the big one of these. Wilt, great at answering Improbable Alliance. We saw how impactful it was in that game. It single-handedly kept Corey in the game to the position where Corey was almost able to win the game. Klothys is interesting because it does put on sustained pressure and it does continue keeping Corey's graveyard in check. But once the cycling deck is fully rolling, the pace at which Klothys is removing a card from the graveyard just isn't cutting it. So it is a powerful card. It is going to do some work, but not the insane amount of work that it does against other graveyard-based decks that are trying to cast escape cards, for example, where you can just get rid of one escape card each turn.
Exactly. The surgicality of the Klothys here is actually a bit of a downside. You'd rather a scattershot approach like the Tormod script, something that gets rid of everything in the graveyard, and but it still will play a role. Even the little life buff is very useful. Even chipping away at the opponent's life total so you can get in there with the dragon one turn earlier. I mean, that makes a difference. It's a good card in the matchup, but a good point and well made money. It's not going to flip the script on its head here. All right, we move on to game number 2 now with Matt Sperling taking an early lead in this round, having picked up a Game 1 win against his adversary here, Corey Burkhart. You're watching live coverage of the league weekend. My name's Riley Knight, and with me in the booth, Marnie Devoody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Wonderful to have your company. On behalf of the entire coverage team, Maria, Ailey, and Corey, it is wonderful to have your company as we continue to explore this relatively fresh standard format with the arrival of various Kaldheim cards, although Kaldheim cards not on the menu on the northern half of your screen here. This Jeskai cycling deck is as old as the hills, been around since Ikoria, of course.
The essentially Ikoria block constructed deck, as it more or less were.
Yeah. Corey's like, ooh, Hengegate Pathway. I'll get 4 copies of them, and those are all the Kaldheim cards I need.
Kaldheim really revolutionizing standard from Corey Burkhart's point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, oh, my mana is slightly better. Very good. All right, let's call it a day, boys. We're done. Granite Stinger coming down, and we'll be joined perhaps by... No, we're going to see Go for Blood, and I mentioned this earlier, the fact that these cycling cards are sometimes cast for what they actually represent, and this is a great way to get rid of that Edgewall Innkeeper.
Yeah, I think what we saw last game...
I don't like that. That's just, sorry to cut you off there, Manny, but we've seen some really top-quality BM from Matt Sperling this match. And, look, I don't want to criticize him too hard. I don't want to come down too hard on him, but that wasn't his best work. I've seen better stuff from Matt. I think he knows he's better than that as well. That was an opportunistic and unconvincing nice there. And, look, he is one of the best in the world. We know that. He's one of the greatest players currently playing Sperling, but he's better than this, and he knows it.
Yeah, it's weakness. It's showing cracks in the shell.
It's panic is what it is from Sperling there, and you can see he is rattled. Maybe he's got stuck in his own head a little bit. Maybe getting that Game 1 win is sort of thought, oh geez, I kind of got away with that. So it's time for him to settle down, get back to basics. Judicious use of hello. Oops is always a mainstay. Nice, just too many risks taken with nice. It can really backfire badly, and that's what we're seeing here with Sperling.
Yeah, I mean, Riley, he hit the 4th land, never didn't have it. Showdown of the Scalds. 5th land, there it is. All right, Matt Sperling is
back in it.
One Unleashed Fury away from having a 16-point lethal swing next turn.
After an embarrassing misstep there with the BM, he is thankfully playing this game of Magic the Gathering much better.
Yeah.
So we could see a huge turn next turn from Matt Sperling.
All right, this is going to be interesting. Will Corey Burkhart make the read of the 16-point swing and play a Drannith Healer here to put himself at 17? This is, it could be the turning point for Corey. I guess with the Showdown of the Skulls, it's actually much more than 16. Never mind. There's nothing to play around here. You just have to hope your opponent doesn't have it.
Yeah, and they so often do, in my experience. They so often do. Those luck sack opponents I'm playing against, oh, mate, how do they do it? Flourishing Fox to play. I mean, I said before, it's nearly dinner time for me, so I think I'm going to go and enjoy a nice big bowl of my own words, Marnie, because I was saying that I don't think this deck is fast enough to beat the cycling list, but I mean, I'm being embarrassed here. I got egg on my face. So I'm going to have a bowl of my own words with egg on top.
This is just circling back to what we talked about, the importance of Improbable Alliance in this matchup.
Yeah. Yep. If you had a chump blocker, you'd be like, sure, yeah, make your dragon a 20/20. Doesn't matter to me. All right, Klothys gets rid of a healer here. It's going to ding Burkhart down to 16. And remember, the second chapter of the Showdown is now live. And with Unleash Fury, Sajiri Shelter.
Burkhart is, I believe, Sperling is one spell short of killing Burkhart right now, as he would be able to use Fire Prophecy on his own dragon to get another counter. However, that would still leave him one spell short, so this may actually motivate him to not go for the lethal, for the big dragon combo this turn, and instead use some of these Showdown of the Scald's exiled cards instead.
There's a plane out of the exile zone. Planes.
Yeah, Matt just doing the math, making sure he's not missing the lethal. There are cards that he could cycle into with that Fire Prophecy that would give him that lethal if he were to go for it. But I think just choosing to play it safe here, getting rid of that Stinger, and hoping that Corey isn't able to put together something insurmountable for him in this one turn that essentially he has.
All right, playing it a bit more carefully here. And just a Searing Spear there, not going to loot anything away or rummage anything away. All right, off the top, Improbable Alliance. Okay, 3 lands and a Lurrus. Not the best hand here for Burkhart, who does seem to have run out of Cyclers.
Not the hand you want to see.
Not the hand you want to see. No. And that Lurrus there, of course, the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that on the deck graphics, Jeskai Cycling came in as a 4-color deck with black, but the only black card in the deck, of course, Lurrus. It's not actually splashing deck black meaningfully, this list. So the action now with Burkhart, who has to decide what his way forward is.
I believe there's a Footfall Crater in the graveyard.
There is I think there's a Stinger. No, I think it's Stinger Healer.
Unfortunate. Yeah. Okay, so we'll probably get that Stinger back this turn. We'll hold off on just casting the Improbable Alliance, trying to get that Lurrus value, considering you're not triggering it this turn anyways. But this Colossus, Riley, it has kept this graveyard in check. And
yeah, it really has. Just pruning away. Just pruning away a little bit here and there. It's done some real work. So Colossus getting rid of, you can see there, just to go for bloods here. And reducing the number of options available for the Lurrus that's on the battlefield. And is it Dragon O'Clock?
I think this is still one spell short.
So you go the Dragon, it's a 4/4. You play the Sajiri Shelter, it becomes a 5/5. You play the Unleash Fury, and it becomes a 7/7, which then gets doubled to 14.
It becomes a 6/6.
How did I go from 5 to 7?
I'm not sure.
How did I go from 5 to 7? Is there a number system that goes from 5 to 7?
It would be a perfect number system if it was.
It would be. I always feel like the number 6 is a weak number. I don't know why what do we need the number 6 for?
I don't need it.
Does anyone use it? Do builders use it when they're building stuff, or carpenters or something? I don't think so. Oh, no, do you know what it is? Subway sandwiches. Because you can get a 6-inch or a foot long. That's the only reason. That's the only situation where the number 6 is ever used. Is it Subway? If you're hungering, if you want to eat fresh, that's the only reason you need number 6. All right, here's a stomp on the Lurrus.
Get that out of the way.
Gained off of the companion, but it's going to hit the bin now.
Just unfortunate draws for Corey Burkhart. So many lands here in this Jeskai cycling that really doesn't play that many lands, Riley.
No.
I think it's 19 total that it plays.
Flooding out kind of gross here. And now the Improbable Alliance online with a 1/1. Sperling showing that he can play very patiently indeed, this bloke. Very patiently indeed.
All right, 13 life for Corey Burkhart. Matt Sperling, I believe, is still a mana short.
Can play the Dragon. It comes in as a 4/4. It gets a counter, becomes a 3/10. Gets another double Fury, becomes a 14/7, right? Numbers are very difficult.
Very difficult.
Very difficult indeed. Looks like we're going to go to Dragon Town here. So the 4-4, we do have a chapter of the Showdown of the Scald, so that's going to put a counter on the Beast here, becomes a 9-9, and in comes the Dragon.
Yeah, I think this is just a chump block from Corey. He just didn't have it. Matt was 1 damage short, so just going to go for another showdown. Next turn, this is certainly going to be lethal from the Dragon now that it's in play. So Corey essentially has this window to answer this Dragon or kill Matt.
Oh, and Clothis is going to wake up for a little bit there, just as a little treat. Just going to wake up
for
Clothis. Just a little treat. Comes up as a 4-5. Just wakes up for a little bit there. No, look, Corey Burkhart's drawn an absolute stinker this game here. He's drawn 5 billion lands and only about 3 non-lands, and that's just not what this deck needs to do. You know, I talked about the velocity of this list. Usually, it can cycle, fill up its graveyard, no worries at all. That hasn't happened here. The life buffer from the Drannith Healer has not been enough. The single, and another land. Oh my goodness. That's rough. That's really rough there for Corey. You can see a little shake of the head, little hand in the face there, and you do feel for the bloke. These aren't the draws that you want when you're playing this kind of deck.
Yeah, it was already looking bad, but at this point, it's just over. Matt Sperling has the Sejiri Shelter, give the Dragon protection from blue, get it through the blockers. No real concern for a Zenith Flare. This Clothis has just done a great job of making sure no cycling cards remain in Corey's graveyard, and Matt Sperling should know at this point that this game is over in his favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Another copy of Unleashed Fury as well can force even more damage through. But at this point, I mean, how much do you even need? You're getting 2 counters on all of your creatures here from each spell that you play. This Edgewall Innkeeper putting 2 +1/+1 counters on. It finally is a 7/7. We got there, Money. We got there.
We did it. We found 7.
We found a way to make it 7/7.
7 does exist.
And now, and only now, does Corey Burkhart have Matt Sperling's permission to die. Bone Crusher Giant triggers Edgewall Innkeeper and Double Showdown. This time going on the Clothis here as well.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Looks like Mr. Burke. Oh, wow, and the Tormod's Crypt as well. Broken. 0 mana.
This
2
is just...
+1/+1 counters. Watsy, please.
Matt, please, just end this.
And that's going on the Bone Crusher Giant as well.
Stop, he's already dead, Matt.
Exactly. Matt Sperling just standing in front of the mirror in the gym, just flexing. And in they come. Huge attack here. The opportunity given to chump block, but I don't think it's going to matter. Wait.
He has 2 Unleashed Furies. There's other creatures attacking.
Can't you just block all of them?
I don't know why Matt wouldn't be using.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Can't you just block all of them here? Is he not giving Burkhart another turn?
He is. He absolutely is. And I think from Corey here, I honestly don't know what to tell you.
Just playing with his food here a little bit.
I don't know what Matt could be playing around here from
Okay. Just looking to savagely give Corey the business here with another Unleashed Fury. That's going to double Clothis' power. Bunch of counters on it before that, however. Clothis becomes a big thumper and gets in for a cool 16. And that's all she wrote.
Is that the official term for it, a thumper?
Yes. Once it gets to a certain power level, that's indeed what happens there. But Matthew Sperling taking out games number 1 and